Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Thank you for being with us. I am Judith Eaton with the Council for Higher Education Accreditation, and my friend and colleague Stemenka Uvelich-Trumbish, Senior Advisor for International Affairs at CHEA, and I are very pleased to bring you this webinar. Our focus is on quality in higher education in a time of crisis. And as all of us are attempting to meet this challenge, I hope that everyone is safe and well. There are two questions on which we will be focusing today. The first is about the key elements for successful online teaching and learning, as all of us are experiencing a significant increase in the number of students engaging higher education online. And our second question is about the role of quality assurance and what we are doing in accreditation and quality assurance to address this. None of us knows how long this pandemic will last. We don't know what the fall will bring. And in the face of the challenge and the uncertainty, we are attempting to do the very best we can to serve students. To work with us with these questions, today we have a superb panel of international experts. Carolyn Campbell, Senior Consultant at the Observatory on Borderless Higher Education, Rodrigo Guerra Botello, the Secretary General of the Federation of Mexican Private Higher Education Institutions, Peter Ocubicola, the President of GUNI, the Global University Network for Innovation, CHEA Piano, the International Consultant for Education with the EU support for higher education in the ASEAN region, and Johnson Zhang, the Chief Expert of Yunnan Higher Education Evaluation Center, and also Johnson is the President of the Asia Pacific Quality Network. We do have an opportunity for comments and questions, and we ask you please, a number of you are already doing it, use the chat function because we want to hear from you as well as our panelists. Each of our panelists will address each of the two questions. I will be asking the panelists some questions and then turning to your questions or your comments, and then we'll move forward. And with that, and our first question about key elements for successful online teaching and learning, Johnson, if I may, let me start with you. We need you to unmute.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me, Judith?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you and share with you in CHEA CIQG webinar. Almost overnight, coronavirus makes MOOCs, online classes, micro classes, and other kinds of online teaching came to us unexpectedly. It seems that future teaching in science fiction films come to us all of a sudden. However, the teachers and students who rush to battle are not really well prepared. APQN survey of the influence of COVID-19 in quality of higher education at universities shows that 20% of the teachers students consider online teaching is inefficient, and 53% consider just so-so. To answer the question of what is a key element of successful online teaching, I think compare with a traditional face-to-face teaching. First of all, we need to know what online teaching has changed. I'd like to share 3 points. Number 1, online teaching organization pattern has changed, which means the change of teaching model. First, Students' home-based learning is different from teachers' face-to-face teaching in the classrooms. And it is difficult for both teachers and students to keep the same step and keep the same pace with each other. Second, online teaching is one-way teaching, and it is difficult to discuss between teachers and students, and it is also difficult to communicate among students themselves. Third, during online teaching, teachers and students are separated in different locations and untouchable from one another. There's no eye contact, no group discussion, no other group learning atmosphere. Teaching elements become electronization. At this changed background of new teaching organization model, we must pay attention to double key elements. How do teachers teach? How do students learn? 2, online teaching relationship has changed, which means a new relationship between teachers and students should be established. Compared with the traditional teaching, students' home-based online learning has changed from the teacher-controlled learning to student individual learning. And the teacher's leading role has been greatly weakened. At this changed background of new teaching relationship, we must pay attention to 3 key elements. How to establish a new relationship between teachers and students. How to establish a new relationship among students themselves. And what are effective student support and academic support services can we provide? And last point is, online teaching technology has changed, which means higher requirements for the use of IT. In the home-based learning environment, network technology has become crucial technology to support students' home-based learning. Teachers' instructions, guidance, and inventions to students' learning must rely on IT platforms, networks, and various teaching tools, which puts forward the high requirements for teachers' teaching ability of modern IT. For many teachers, especially the senior ones, they face huge difficulties and challenges. At this changed background of new teaching technology, we must pay attention to 3 key elements. How to train qualified faculty and staff skilled at IT. How to increase financial investment to meet basic IT equipment. What types of interactive delivery of online teaching and learning are useful? Facing up to the subversive and disruptive changes of online teaching, first of all, we must pay close attention to the great challenges of online teaching, such as the 8 key elements mentioned above. By this way, we can be provided with new space and direction to discuss and explore quality assurance of higher education at university at post-crisis era. Thank you for your attention.
Jensen, thank you. And folks, if you have questions or comments, if you'll put them into the chat room, we would very much appreciate it. Rodrigo, if I may turn to you, what is happening from your perspective with your institutions in Mexico?
Thank you very much. Good morning. Friendly hello from Mexico City. It's dawning this morning here in Mexico. As compared to Asia and Europe, Mexico had their own problems of the crisis of COVID-19 very late. We have our problems starting by March. So the lockdown was ordered by the government in the third week. So at that time, universities has barely a week to prepare for the lockdown and decide how to go about the online education. So what we found the hard way is that online education is a very different subject as compared to the traditional classroom activities. So at the end, we understood that what is very important is that a planning is a very important element that should be considered when you start making the online education offer in a much more higher volumes for the students. Before the crisis, the amount of students enrolled in higher education in Mexico it was about 16%. After the crisis, that 16% moved almost to 100%. So all the internal processes in the universities were almost collapsed. So of course, there was not enough time to make planning, but planning is going to be a key element if we are going to remain in higher levels of online education. Then everybody, I think wrongly, thought that online education was cheaper, which is not. And the funny part is that the students and the families believe that the higher education online was to be more inexpensive. So everybody started asking for reimbursements of fees. So, but at the end, you find out that you have to have enough resources to offer a higher quality online education. Then we need to have a strong curricular and structural design skills available at the university. And those are quite scarce, at least in Mexico. So the current faculty, most of the times are not prepared, were not prepared to run classes on online basis. So, so that was a very complicated issue. In the case of basic school and other areas of the higher education, when you have unions of teachers were opposing to go online. That created another problem in the laboral sector, but that was part of the high school problems that they have to face. Then you need a very robust technological platform to handle asynchronous and synchronous operations. Of course, you need a centralized 24 hours support, technical support. Most of the times before the crisis, the students were just working or studying during working hours, probably 8 to 8 or something like that. Now, with this crisis and everybody is trying to get an education online, we found out that you don't have the 24-hour support, you are in deep trouble. Technical support, you are in deep trouble. So, of course, we need a virtual library with enough material there. And at the end, we have to have training programs that were not planned. So because and those programs, of course, because the lockdown had to be online, of course, again. So we run massive training programs online for teachers that were not used to teach on online education. So at the end, we found out also that we didn't have an evaluation systems to assess the performance of all those elements that I just mentioned. So it has been a very complicated experience. We don't know what will happen after we open up, that we are planning to open up probably in June. And of course, the next school year will start on August, September. And we don't know how many of the students that today are online will rather stay online, or we rather prefer to go back to the classroom activities. So that will define a number of strategies and actions that we will take on these elements I just mentioned. So we look forward to a very exciting times in the next 3 or 4 months. Thank you, Judith.
Rodrigo, thank you, and thank you for being so clear about the challenges in Mexico. CHEA, what is happening in Manila and the Philippines? What's your perspective here?
So hello from the Philippines. Let me start by telling you a story which appeared in Rappler, a Manila-based online news platform last week. A civil engineering student from one of the universities in Manila had to climb a mountain in her hometown to send online a class requirement to her professor. She and her brother had to walk 5 kilometers for at least an hour to get a stable internet connection. Just a bit of context to this story. The Philippines is a developing country with 7,641 islands and over 108 million people. It has 1,963 higher education institutions and about 3 million students. On March 8, the government declared a state of public health emergency or lockdown. On March 11, the Commission on Higher Education, or CHEA for short, issued a memorandum suspending all classes and activities in the country. It stipulated that in lieu of in-campus learning, institutions were allowed to utilize distance learning, e-learning, flexible learning, and other alternative modes of delivery, if they have the resources to do so. HEIs may also undertake alternative assessments and remediations. A week after the release of the CHEA memo, the Student Council Alliance of the Philippines and Students' Rights and Welfare submitted a position paper stating that online classes are manifestations of the digital and social divide in the academe and in society. Only students with an internet at home can access education. Soon thereafter, student organizations from all over the country also submitted position papers and identified the challenges brought about by the shift to online classes, such as poor internet connections or lack of connectivity, lack of access to electronic devices, excessive academic loads, unreasonable deadlines, and exams that are neither fair nor proper. The students also claim that the demand to comply with academic requirements amidst the crisis gave them undue stress and anxiety. So there was a clarion call for the CHEA to suspend online classes and assignments. In an effort to respond to the concerns of students, some universities rolled out contingency plans consisting of blended learning and the use of online materials and platforms. Colleges and universities also aired their own concerns about the need to train their faculty on the use of digital platforms and how to apply effective techniques for online learning and student assessment. Several colleges and universities moved to a pass-fail approach, eliminating grades for the rest of the current academic year. Last Monday, May 4, came some breaking news from CHEA. So the CHEA chair that only 20% of state universities and colleges nationwide are equipped to facilitate online classes. He further said that the poor internet connection, especially in the provinces, has made the conduct of online classes not viable. As an alternative to online classes, he announced that colleges and universities may apply flexible learning, a combination of online and offline learning activities with take-home work that students can do during their free time. The Commission will also help state colleges and universities set up their learning management systems that will equip them with the tools to facilitate online teaching. I would like to end by echoing the imperative voiced by the Filipino students. As we adopt new technologies in education prompted by COVID-19 pandemic, we must ensure that the quality of learning is never sacrificed and that no student is left behind. The right of students to quality, accessible, and relevant education must always take center stage. Thank you.
Judith, thank you, and thank you for that heartfelt commitment, statement of commitment we all have to quality higher education, even in these times. Peter, turning to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Judith. And hello all from Africa, specifically from Nigeria, specifically from Lagos, where I'm locked down. The question is about the key elements of successful online delivery. I underline the word successful. I will start by giving you the theoretical perspective, and I will end within my 4 minutes to share with you a case study of what we are doing in Lagos State University. As I said, it's a case study. It may not, you can extrapolate it to the whole of Africa. In my view, the 4 key elements of successful online delivery are: 1, the human resources that are empowered, that are skilled, that have been trained in delivering online courses. 2, the infrastructure. Infrastructure in this case will include the courseware, the technology, especially connectivity. The 3rd is a combination of the first 2, how the human elements implement the infrastructure. And the 4th one, which will come in the second question, is quality assurance. I know that Collins, I was just reading the chart, talked about face-to-face being taken to be superior to online delivery. And the quality assurance component of my 4 key elements will come into play, and I will explicate on that later. So let me go on the next 3 minutes to share with you how we are doing it in Lagos State University. We won a World Bank Center of Excellence, and it's only to train graduate students. Today, we have 88 students from Nigeria, Ghana, Burundi, and Democratic Republic of Congo, and we deliver 6 courses to them. We have a curriculum that has been approved by the regulatory agency, the National Universities Commission. And what we did was, within a very short period of time, take on facilitators who have expertise in delivering ODL and many others who don't. And so we give them some possible training in ODL delivery, but they are experts in their content areas. I would do that from all over the world. Indeed, many of our facilitators are vice chancellors, we call them here. In the US is president, who are willing to be part of the enterprise so that they can also learn implementing this in their universities, because we have a presidential order that all schools close, but all schools try to implement online learning. And we are aware that we cannot move to the ideal. It's on a spectrum or a continuum from 0 to 10, for instance. So many universities, many schools are on level 1 of 10. The alternative is to say, everybody stay at home for God knows for how long. The better model, we believe, is start somewhere and begin to learn as we progress. So we deliver our courses in a unique mix. We have live lectures, live workshops. When I say live, it means live. The facilitator comes on, and our students, they are scattered all over Africa, remote locations, good internet connectivity, poor internet connectivity. So a challenge that we found about connectivity is the ability, or the ability, yes, of the students to afford data. Because everywhere you go, likely in Africa, maybe not everywhere you go, most places you can get connectivity on your phone, no matter how small it is. So we agreed that we're going to give our students 5,000 naira for a month. So we're giving them for the month of April. We've only done for 1 month. Now we have discussion forums, quizzes, assignments, and we allow them, by way of the quality assurance, to evaluate our courses that we have delivered every week. And the National Universities Commission, as a regulatory agency, is oversighting more or less the program. And then we have AAU also playing some role in. So we have ongoing ODL training for faculty and support staff. In other words, we don't want to wait till the day will dawn when everybody will have all the training. Said, no, you're on level 1 of 10, start. And then we keep training them. We have a training mode, a very robust training program. We keep training them. By week 2, they had improved. Our facilitators and our learner support people, they had improved. By week 3, they are improved. Week 4, we are now in week 5. As I said, we have challenge of internet access and all that. So that's what I want to take on. To summarize, 4 key elements. The first is, and it's a rank order, the first is the human resources to deliver online. Most of us, most of our people are on level 1 of 10. So we're building up their capacity. The other is infrastructure. Infrastructure, connectivity, the course materials, the technology, the platform, good enough. You see, we use Zoom for our live lectures, but we have our other platform, our virtual learning environment, which is Moodle based, that our students everywhere they are, they have access to this. The third is a combination, how our facilitators will use the technology. And the last is quality assurance. Thank you very much, Judith, for giving me an opportunity to be part of this panel.
Thank you, Peter. And it's important for all of us to learn from the undertaking on which you have been working. Carolyn, may I turn to you, please, about what is happening in the UK and elsewhere?
Thank you, Judith. I wasn't actually going to focus so much on the UK. In some ways, things have been a little bit easier here in terms of the extent of open and distance learning experience that we already have. Many institutions offer graduate programs, for example, online. And of course, many of them participate in MOOCs. But what we can see is that the current crisis has catapulted many institutions in real time to deliver provision online and at a distance for the first time, and that technology is being seen as a facilitator rather than the much threatened disruptor that it was seen as in the past. I mean, 2 years ago, the Observatory published a report, Whatever Happened to the Promise of Online Learning? And we surveyed 12 countries around the world, finding that only 15% of the market share of students were studying online. We just couldn't have predicted that in the last few months, as Rigo and others have said, that that level has been 100%. The only access to education at all levels, although it might have been uneven, has been via technology. And everywhere, institutions are beginning to realize, if they didn't already, the importance of effective leadership, the need for good communication and planning, and the value of support staff. Perhaps that's some markers for future quality assurance agencies to look at in more detail. The crisis has made evident the use of online and distance learning as a contingency measure in emergency situations, not one of the 3 future scenarios we described in our report. But what won't be acceptable to students and possibly funders and regulators is that short-term emergency solutions implemented in crisis mode shouldn't be simply rolled forward or adopted wholesale in the next semester or academic year. I mean, as other colleagues have said, online provision can be as good quality as face-to-face tuition, but the student experience is different. And understanding the different issues and challenges that online students face is important in order to enable learners to take full advantage of the learning. And this is something that requires institutional commitment and an institutional strategy to make sure that delivery is even across the institution. The voices of students can provide substantial insight here, but let's not assume that traditional feedback questionnaires are what is appropriate right now. What we need to know right now from students and indeed from staff is what's worked well in the crisis, what hasn't worked and why, and what suggestions have we got for improvement and change moving on. But I mean, online education is not new. There's already a myriad of examples of successful provision about, and access to a huge range of resources, which is now being supplemented by, for example, UNESCO launching the Global Education Coalition, in partnership with Microsoft and others. And there are lessons to be learned from existing providers in terms of success and sustainability. Some of them have already been rehearsed here. But one of the questions that arises is, are institutions going to be in collaborative and sharing mode in the future? How sharing are they going to be, or how competitive might they be in attempts to survive, and what is going to be a dire economic situation in many countries to come? The key elements for successful online teaching and learning haven't changed because of the crisis. As others have said, good online provision is designed and planned, it's not cobbled together. And successful online courses require substantial investment and bespoke designed materials, as well as a focus on pedagogy. It's also important, as others have said, to invest in what has been described as wraparound support services to identify and support disadvantaged or underperforming students. Where in the near or even longer future programs are intended to combine online with face-to-face elements, so blended or hybrid learning, the transition between these elements needs to be smooth and carefully thought out. And in fact, this was a third scenario that was described in our report as online is not the point. This delivery mode can be a vehicle for pedagogy and shape, but it is sound, purposeful pedagogy that fosters learning, not the delivery mode alone. So what are the implications of this? As it seems to be a route, or perhaps a route map is a more descriptor, that universities in many countries envisage in a progressive return to full on-campus learning. Start at home online, then transition to campus when possible or desirable. An example, for example, is Learning Without Limits at Hull International Business School. But these approaches have got to be predicated on a pedagogy that can be relevant both to online synchronous and in-person tuition. So indeed, it would be good to know more about what institutions are doing to support faculty in delivering learning in this mode and facing the challenges of motivating and engaging students. Now, I mean, I think there's a big challenge ahead, because at the moment, we know our students. And the students know the teachers, they know the institution, but if students are coming and starting in September or October or November, they don't know the institution, they don't know the student, the teachers and the other students. So I think that's a big challenge. And again, not assuming that what has just been working at the moment is going to be adequate for the future. As others have mentioned, it's a mistake to assume that online education is cheap to develop and deliver. So pricing and costing, including for student services, has got to be carefully factored into the future. Because students are not going to expect tuition fees to be the same as face-to-face. But one of the other things that has been mentioned by all the people who have already spoken is how to take account of student digital poverty. I mean, it's a reality. And we already know that closures and disruption have exacerbated learning inequalities through digital poverty and other things. So how do we address this in the future to make sure that we don't disadvantage already vulnerable and underrepresented students? That's all I'd like to say just now. Thanks, Judith.
Thank you, Carolyn. Sorry, I was muted for a moment there. Let me go right to several of the comments and questions that we received. And these are questions that have come up a number of times. And please, whoever on the panel would like to respond. But going back a bit ago to earlier when Jenzin and Rodrigo were talking, the issue of faculty and perhaps some opposition to online efforts came up. Could you elaborate a bit on that? Are you seeing very much of that? And if so, what form is that opposition taking?
Go ahead, exchanging.
Yeah, go ahead, Rodrigo, please.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. Well, first, I think with a very few exception of the faculty that were already teaching online, I would say no more than 10%. The rest of the faculty was caught by surprise about this decision of the country to lock down and the fact that they will have to adjust the teaching to the online procedures. They were caught by surprise, and they were, as a second reaction, opposing to that. The reason was that they feel they were not prepared. They feel that they were not, they had not equality. And in some examples, they went back to the union to make the point. But on the other hand, there was no option because the lockdown that, I mean, we have been now 8 weeks, almost 8 weeks lockdown, and nobody knows how longer will be. So without any other option, the faculty had to go and make their best effort. At the same time, universities forced them to go into urgent emergency training program, online training program. So some reactions were, okay, I will do it, but you have to give me an extra pay. Sometimes they say, okay, I will do it, but I'm not responsible for the quality of my teaching, that kind of thing. So 7 weeks later, which is today, I think that things are a little more smoother, but then the quality question about the teaching remains in the air. I mean, we are doing that, we are doing as best as we can because there is an emergency. Once the crisis is gone, we'll have to go very deep, into very deep reflection and to know if this faculty, who is going to be able and willing to go to this online process, not because there is a crisis, but because there is the strategy of the university to follow in the next months and years. So we will see. They are very sensitive right now, the situations, but because the crisis is still here, they are making their own best, their own effort as best as they can. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Anyone else on the panel have a comment or observation or response to the question about faculty and responsiveness to online?
Yes, if I may.
Please, Peter.
Yeah, the staff, teachers in the universities in Nigeria have raised a lot of issues about about not being ready to deliver online education. Aside from the open and distance learning institutions, apart from the institutions that run blended, that's open and distance learning and face-to-face. So they have offered, they have resisted. And you see, whether good or bad, there's always resistance. The way, in my view, to rise to this, because in nature, there is homeostasis, things will balance out over time, just like Rodrigo has said. So what has happened in Nigeria is that the faculty, we call them teachers here, are encouraged by the fact that we do not know when this thing will be over. So why can't we, I mean, which one do you want? Stay at home for X number of months that you don't know and just fold your hands and earn your salary, or just start something and develop along the way. So all our universities have hooked on to that mode. Which mode? The mode of starting something. Let me tell you what some of them do at the very rudimentary level. They use WhatsApp to send messages. They use Skype. They use all manner of technologies that are students. I'm telling you, over 90% of university students in Nigeria, over 90%, have Facebook. So they have internet access to do other things with. So the system is leveraging on the fact that our students will have WhatsApp. They do WhatsApp. So they use that at the rudimentary level. The other is to underline the fact that the students will have to graduate in X number of years, 4 years, 5 years, and so on. So many parents, I do not know, I think it's contradicting what, well, not contradictory. I mean, the resistance that they have is that parents say, okay, go into school. They are looking at a situation where let's get something going so that we won't have to unnecessarily extend the number of years that we have to spend in the university.
Okay, Peter, thank you. And what you just said is consistent with a point you made earlier, that we're all in a formative, developing, learning mode with regard to all of this. And we can't just sit back and wait till everything's as perfect or as good as we can make it. We must respond to what is going on now and be learning ourselves along the way. One other question that has come up several times in this segment, and then I'll turn to the quality assurance question, and that is, we, I think, can acknowledge that there is at least a perception that online learning is not the same and perhaps not as good as face-to-face learning, the traditional college experience being on a campus. How do we build more confidence in online learning as authentic and valuable and as substantive as the traditional model? And again, we need to do this over time, but some thoughts about that from the panelists?
Can I jump
Yes.
in again very briefly?
Yes, and then Jensen, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to share my experience in China. As you know, from almost 5 months, universities didn't open, we shut down, and for the online teaching, we began in February, and at that time, everybody, most of the teachers are very worried because we're not prepared for the online teaching. But later on, March, now it is May, and you are surprised to see almost all the teachers, they know how to use the online teaching, and the students are very active. And I think at first the quality is not very bad, but it is not good. And people said it's useless to have the online teaching, but now, just this month, myself, I will give an online course to students, and more person would like to join me, because I think it is because the more practice, the more experience you get. And I am sure that the online teaching, the quality of online teaching will be better and better with time, went on, with more lessons given the students, participants. I would like to say, yes, we're not ready, but with more practice, and in China now we have at least over 10 classrooms or 10 methodologies or WeChat, all kinds of things have come here, and we would like to try and it make great experience for me. And as you know very well, I have been teaching university for over 30 years, and this is the first time for me, but I am very enthusiastic, and I'm sure that the students are very good, very nice to listen to my lectures, because for the online teaching, I never talk nonsense. I just talk very good methodologies, and I think that is good. More practice will make better. Thank you.
Thank you, Jensen. Peter, you had a comment?
Thank you very much. Yes, I do. I agree with you, Judith, about the perception out there that online delivery is of lower quality than face-to-face. That's the perception out there. Until I was appointed the chairman of council of the largest university in Africa, That's the National Open University of Nigeria. We enrolled 525,000 students. And when I became chairman of council, I told the council and the vice chancellor and the senate that, look, out there in the Nigerian community, they think that our graduates are worth nothing. And we then decided to look at our delivery system, and we found that that perception is not misplaced. The perception is not misplaced because there is a gap between the face-to-face experience and the online experience in terms of the quality of product that comes out of it. So in my view, and that's what we are doing in National Open University of Nigeria, we're trying to close that gap between the experience, the face-to-face experience, and the online experience. And how have we done this in the case study which I presented? We're doing live lectures, we're doing discussion forum, we're doing quizzes, we're doing assignments, everything that the online student will, the face-to-face student we are doing other than meet physically. So for sure, the physical meeting will have its own positive effect on the quality of graduates, which we are missing out. I am not too sure that we are going to get 100% equivalence in the two of them, but the goal is for us to strive deliberately to narrow that gap between the two experiences.
Thank you so much. I now want to turn to our second question, and that is the role of quality assurance bodies in addressing quality in this environment. And we're going to hear from each of the panelists. And panelists, a couple questions have come up a number of times in this regard, if you might keep these in mind. One is, how do we address the issue of inequality? Whether it's inequality of technology, whether it's lack of resources, whether we're talking about student populations that have been traditionally underserved, when we're talking about quality. And then what kind of instruments or tools are out there? Can you point us to something that we might use as we're trying to address quality? Are there evaluation instruments? Are there assessment tools of which you're aware that you might mention that some folks might find valuable to use? And then in general, and then Johnson, I'll turn to you. We had a question of how many people on the call representing many, many countries are planning, or it looks like you're going to be fully online in the fall, that even though about all of us would like to have a campus experience available, we're not at all certain that's going to happen. And the most likely thing for the fall will be full online. And if you could just tell us about that in the chat room, and panelists, if you could mention the expectation there, I would appreciate it. So what about quality assurance in the context of that, evaluation tools, assessment instruments, and the inequality issue that has already been mentioned? And Johnson, with that, I'll turn to you. We need you to unmute, please. Thank you.
Okay. You mean the second question?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'd like to see about second question. Yes. I'm sorry, Judith, do you mean we move to a second question or just elaborate the first question?
The second question, do you have additional thoughts or comments about the role of,
yes.
of quality assurance?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
As quality QAs, I think at this time, we are not very prepared And in China, I think the QAs not catch up with what really happened in universities. In my center, we didn't do any site review and visits, but we just did some paperwork and we trying to make some standards. So for me, I think as QA at this particular moment, and QA must be the promoter of the change of quality concept. In the past, we said external QA as a leading rule and internal QA as a main body over and over again. But frankly speaking, we didn't make it real happen. Today, for the first time, things just come to us without expectations. So we finally realize the principle of dialectical materialism is right. The external cause is only the condition of the change, while the internal cause is the key to change. So we all know that no matter how hard we try to hatch, stoves can never become chickens, but only eggs can become chickens. So external QA must promote the quality concept of internal QA is a foundation stone, is a long journey of seeking excellent quality. This is first rule is the promoters. And the second rule, I think QA must be quality standard setters. Because before coronavirus, university adopted a single method that is traditional face-to-face teaching. During coronavirus, universities have to adopt online teaching, and after coronavirus, or we'd like to see at the post-crisis era, teaching model is not a single choice of online or offline teaching, but a blending teaching, including both online and face-to-face teaching. Similarly, external QA must adopt a blending evaluation model. We must reform a series of blueprints, plans, concept, contents, methods, standards, and all of others. For example, like we, us, YGEC, we made 6 criteria to evaluate online teaching. Number 1, teachers' course rate. Number 2, students' attendance rate. Number 3, teacher-students communication and interaction rate. Number 4, teaching satisfaction. Number 5, learning satisfaction. And 6, administration effectiveness. You will find the criteria is just different with what we used before. So this is the second rule of QA. And the third rule of QA is the participants of quality management. During online teaching, teachers' control of the teaching process directly through homework, daily quizzes, examinations, and other methods has been greatly reduced. Such educational and teaching management system as constraints on students' home-based learning has been immensely cut down. So face-to-face management has become back-to-back management. How to ensure teaching quality, that's worried or most of us. And external QAs must be the participants of quality management in 3 major tasks. Number 1, evaluate and approve standards and technical expectations of online courses, such as discipline, academical, and professional expectations. Number 2, student put forward the suggestions and opinions on the construction of online teaching platforms such as internet access, interface requirements, which we never did before. And the third is organization consultants. organize consultants and experts to conduct consulting services such as guideline of network communication, IT teaching design, etc. And since April, APQN has conducted 2 online surveys, one for universities and the other for QAs in the globe. And I would like please help us to fill in the survey. And as president of APQN, our members are made of both external QA and internal QA. I deeply believe that during coronavirus, external QAs need to reflect and self-examine the traditional, picky, maybe bossy, and even arrogant evaluation behaviors we did in the past. QA need to deeply understand the role of quality promoters, quality standard setters, and participants of quality management. And QA need more to work closely together with internal QA at universities in order to reform quality assurance, both internal and external, to make contribution to improving education quality and dissolving boundaries for quality ranging at this post-crisis area. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Johnson, and that's quite a challenge to us to take advantage of this reform opportunity that is resulting from our current situation. Rodrigo, you had a few things to say earlier about quality assurance. It's very hard to totally pull apart these topics, but I know you're going to elaborate. And would you help us out here, please?
Yeah, thank you, Judith. I think that when you want to address the Q&A body regarding higher education institutions, I think we have to think in 2 different scenarios. Right now, during the crisis, we took a number of actions regarding the quality assurance process that were on progress. Some were delayed. Some others are being run in online. We even the peer visits have been performed online, and we make some adjustments and introduce criteria in the accreditation systems to assess, to evaluate the online performance of the universities. So today we are dealing with the crisis, and in order to not to stop all the quality processes that were already on progress when the crisis came. Now, if we are thinking after the crisis, that's another thing. If the second scenario is that students may select between being campus or being online, that will change the scenario quite a bit. So I think that something that has been learned from this crisis, that as a quality accreditation organization, we need to be closer to the universities, more in a role of advisor, tutors, or teaching. Aside from the traditional responsibilities of accreditation system that we perform. So I think that we have to cross lines and we have to go much beyond, especially if the university to be evaluated will move mostly after the crisis into the online education in substantially more quantities that there is today. For instance, I mentioned at the beginning that before the crisis, only 16% of enrollment of the country were online. If after the crisis that 16% goes to 35% or 40%, that the scenario within the university will change dramatically in the way they conduct, they perform, they administrate, and so on. So I think that the role that we have to play is to help universities to learn from the experience and to learn from the best practices we have in the online evaluation. Then we have to maintain the training programs. This subject has been several times mentioned during this conference. As the students, as the teachers rotates, and I think that we need to maintain a very robust training programs on the online education through the year. Can I have the next one, Peter, please? Joel? Yeah, thank you. Then I think that we have to review the efficiency of the platform we are using. I think that go to the issue that Julie mentioned about the equal opportunity to go online. Again, during this crisis, we had no solution to that. It is going to be very difficult to give credits and grades to different students with different possibilities. We have examples in households in which there are 3 kids making online education, even including the mother that it is a postgraduate students in postgraduate education. So the facilities at home are not enough to in the emergency. Now, this is during the crisis. So in some specific areas, the grading system was changed, not necessarily to take in considerations the typical tests or exams that are performed. So if you move to the second scenario, in which we are going to plan for online education in a normal way, I think there is a number of issues that or actions that could be taken. I think that as a part of the fee, we are talking about private education in Mexico. I think that there should be the financial considerations in order for the students to have an equipment and probably as services. The university can deal with technology vendors and the telecommunications vendors in order to get facilities for the students at a better reduced price. It is possible. It has been done in before. Now, I think that the touchy issue is about the perception of quality and sometimes integrity on the online education. I think the issue is a combination of perception and reality. And as much as we can, we have to go and make progress on the evaluation, the Q&A on the online operations. But then you have to work in the perception. And there are many ideas of how to go about that. For instance, the quality of the faculty, and if you can use teachers that are well recognized and well prestige faculty, that will have an effect in the image. And then if you can make a campaign regarding the alumni of those online education systems that are successful professionals in the professional field, that will help to go to this perception go away about the quality of the programs. So I think what is important is the university to care about the perception of integrity and the perception of the quality. That's the first factor. You have to care and then to address the issue in a number of strategies. So I think that at the end, what is important is that we have to implement programs to help the students. We have very terrible examples of students during this crisis, and the university sometimes didn't have any support for those students during the crisis. We have a mental health issues, and that issue has to be addressed for the next, for the current lockdown and for the next one, which I'm sure we will have sometime in the future. So I think that the most important subject of this question is if we as a Q&A organizations are willing and prepared to cross lines and to advise, and in addition to evaluate the universities, play a different role, at least until the university gets in their own strategies to establish a well-structured and well-prestiged online programs. So there is a role, and again, the role might change during the crisis that we are today, and in the future, in which probably online educations will not substitute the classroom activities, but the amount will increase. In Mexico's case, I think we will double the number of students that we will have online enrollment. Okay, thank you, Judith.
Okay, thank you, Rodrigo, for that thoughtful analysis. CHEA, what is your perspective on this question of quality assurance?
So when I first saw the topic on the role of quality assurance bodies in addressing quality at the time of crisis, what came to my mind was the statement of Dr. Lourdes Quisumbing, who was then president of PASCU during the People Power Revolution in 1986. She said, "We need stable times for accreditation to flourish." I remember writing our member institutions saying that accreditation had to take a back seat while we fought to secure our freedoms from a dictatorial regime. With the onslaught of COVID-19 and its impact on our educational system, as waves of institutions cancel in-person lectures and replace them with virtual meetings, platforms such as Google Classroom, Zoom, or Skype, the coronavirus is set to become the largest peacetime disruption to education in recent human history. In this age of great disruption, quality assurance bodies have to adapt to the changing times. It cannot be business as usual. The US Department of Education has taken the lead and has come up with a document entitled Information for Accrediting Agencies regarding temporary flexibilities provided to coronavirus impacted institutions or accrediting agencies. The guidance document provides both institutions and accrediting agencies with flexibility regarding accreditation visits and distance education, designed to save institutions time in seeking approvals and reducing costs. It further states that accrediting agencies can extend the accreditation of a college that is up for renewal or facing the loss of accreditation if the accrediting agency cannot perform the site visits. I wish the accrediting agencies in the Philippines would study these guidelines and adapt this within their own contexts. So far, no guidance notes have been issued by the private non-governmental accreditation agencies. On the other hand, the National Accrediting Agency for Higher Education in Indonesia, better known as BANPT, has been proactive in meeting the challenges of the digital age. It announced that it is postponing site visits and is now designing a mechanism for virtual visits. The validity period of accredited institutions has also been extended for a maximum of 5 years. In ASEAN, the BANPT is the first to venture into online submission of the self-assessment reports of institutions. It also has a special instrument for online and distance education. Now, what was mentioned again about the instruments, now let me, another important challenge to be addressed by quality assurance agencies in our region, and probably in some other regions, is how to evaluate online classes that are being conducted by institutions. Our current evaluation tools do not cover the delivery of online instruction. There is also a need to align learning assessment procedures and criteria with the new online curricular and pedagogical approaches. There may be a need to formulate a new tool to address these issues. Much remains unknown at this stage in terms of the duration and scope of the crisis. The situation keeps evolving, and the quality assurance agencies have to step up, learn from each other, and act quickly to support their members if it is to overcome the unprecedented and largely unknown challenges of the new normal we are now facing. Thank you, Judith.
Thank you, CHEA, for that careful reflection. We have a couple comments here with regard to the document from the U.S. Department of Education to which you referred. You can find that on the CHEA website at CHEA.org, or if you have a URL that you could just type in, CHEA, that would be nice as well. But that document is available at CHEA.org. With that, Peter, if I may turn to you, please.
Thank you very much, Judith. Time is not on our side, so I'll be very brief. Brief to the extent that I want to underline an issue, which is that we must not fall into a trap of developing quality assurance mechanism that will present the online delivery as inferior. In my view, the instruments that we'll use for quality assuring open and distance learning and face-to-face should, as much as possible, be comparable, recognizing the difference in the delivery systems. The moment we quality assure open and distance learning in a way that will let the products be inferior, then we're self-defeating our efforts in quality assurance in higher education. At the National Universities Commission, we have an instrument for quality assuring all the open and distance learning programs in the Nigerian university system, which was developed consensually. We asked, it went almost all over the world. In India, I can see somebody from the Indian space here. I mean, from India, Commonwealth of Learning, everywhere. So we develop an instrument that will not present open and distance learning or this online delivery as inferior. I'll be pleased to share that instrument with everybody. Now, I saw a question regarding the scale for finding online readiness of faculty. We have a scale which we call the ODL readiness scale, open and distance learning readiness scale. Any faculty, that's teachers or learner support staff, that you want to engage for open and distance learning will have to assess using that scale. The reason being, we want to know where you are on that 10-point scale so that we'll know the intervention to remedy you, to move you from 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 to 10. So I'd be willing to share that instrument. So quality assurance, as I close, I want to say quality assurance of online delivery should be one where we'll not give the impression at all. We'll not get people the perception that, yes, there's COVID-19, yes, we delivered open and distance learning or online delivery to our students. When they graduate after COVID-19, be sure of poorer quality graduates. We don't want that to happen. So we must tighten the mechanism for quality assurance of open and distance learning. And I saw a question regarding online site visit. And I want to share how we do it in our program. We have our regulator, the National Universities Commission. We have the instrument. So from the time we started our training for our doctoral students on this online program, when COVID-19 locked us down, the National Universities Commission enrolled their staff, enrolled the staff. So the staff of National Universities Commission are part of those that were trained and monitoring the courseware that we're using, our delivery system, our lecturers, everything contained that instrument. So they are part of it. It's not a question of you just jumping in at some point to, it's not now cross-sectional, it's longitudinal for the purpose of this COVID-19 thing. I'm sure that when it's all gone, 2 months, 3 months, 2 years, we'll then develop some other mechanism to do for site visit for online. So the whole thing is evolving, and I'm glad that Judith has come up with this webinar with Stamenka and the chair group, and we'll just keep improving. I mean, if we convene this webinar again in another 3 months, you are sure, Judith, that we'll be singing a different tune in a positive direction. Thank you.
Interesting observation, Peter, and my sense is that you're quite right. Carolyn, from your perspective, you've already mentioned several quality assurance issues. Can you expand a bit, please?
I hope I can. I would like to just sort of endorse what Peter says about falling into a trap that would present online education as inferior, through quality assurance agencies. In fact, in the UK, the Open University, other distance learning and online provision has not been treated any differently by the quality assurance agencies, and institutions are expected to meet the same expectations that are set out in the standards and guidelines in the quality code, the UK quality code. I would like to just articulate a little bit about maybe some expectations that institutions that have to deal with multiple accreditors and regulators might like, and that is that there's some kind of consistency in approach across accreditors in relation to how online provision is accredited and reviewed. Perhaps more collaboration, because there seems to be some assumption that at the moment that, yes, it's true that online students are mainly at home, but often online students are very far away from the providing institution in another country. So how can agencies work together to make sure that the online education qualifications are recognized? It's true that many quality assurance agencies and indeed some funders have moved to focus on outcomes as opposed to inputs in quality assurance. So there's the use of metrics and data, for example, on student outcomes and institutional performance that are used in review and reporting activities, and sometimes in funding decisions and allocations. And while it would be expected that approach won't disappear, I think it is a question, perhaps a worry for institutions as to how quality assurance agencies will tackle what in many cases will look like a decline in quality if it's based on those sorts of measures without some kind of contextualization. Why is it that perhaps students are taking longer to graduate over the next couple of years? Why is it that retention might have changed? Why is it that employment of graduates has fallen? Why is it that salaries of graduates have fallen? These are things that institutions in many cases have no control over because of what's going to be the next crisis that comes to us, which is the economic crisis. So how are agencies going to deal with metrics and data so as not to disadvantage either institutions or students? The issue around inequities and how to support students from underrepresented and disadvantaged backgrounds is a really pertinent one, particularly in some developed economies. And it may be a matter of national higher education policy, that access to success is improved, and it may come along with financial incentives or perhaps penalties. And so this is something that has got to be taken into account by quality assurance agencies. And also too, in many institutions have as their mission to serve underrepresented and disadvantaged students. How are they going to do this? How are they doing this in the current crisis? I think that that's a pertinent question to be asked by quality assurance agencies. We have seen, looking around, we've seen a lot of work, and some of it has been described by some of the previous panelists around trying to ensure that students have got access to the internet, who have got broadband access. They may be in some cases being provided with laptops, on loan, these sorts of things. But this is something that's not just a moment for the crisis. It's something that needs to be sustained, particularly as demographics are changing in many different countries. So yes, the issue of digital poverty is not going to go away. One other thing that hasn't really been mentioned, and it is talking about students as a sort of homogeneous group, and that in fact there are differences perhaps between the capabilities, the interests, the expectations of undergraduate students from graduate students in respect of online education. And if we look, for example, at what's been happening in graduate education, particularly in business schools, sometimes in medical and healthcare professions, we can see that there's been a great deal of development of online learning in institutions that are predominantly or have been predominantly face-to-face. So I think there's something there for us to learn from how this has worked, and actually to celebrate the success of students, which might give other people confidence in the quality of online education.
Okay, Carolyn, thank you so much. Let me mention quickly a couple US things, if I may. CHEA did a survey, a brief one, in April of US accrediting organizations and steps they are taking in meeting the challenge of COVID-19 and the flexibility in practices that they're developing, like virtual site visits, like extending the length of an accreditation term and some other things. That's available at CHEA.org. In addition, we have a COVID-19 on the CHEA website resource page, and you can go to that page and link to US recognized accreditors. They're all independent organizations, as you know. Each is addressing COVID-19 impact in a slightly different way, but you can link to each of the accreditors and the actions that they are taking if that is useful information to people. Thank you to our panelists, to Chita, to Rodrigo, to Carolyn, to Peter and Johnson. It's been a very, very rich and robust in ideas 90 minutes that we have had today, and we do appreciate it. I have about half a dozen takeaways that we're going to be dealing with online in a big way. Going forward, we don't know how much, but it'll likely be big. That we need to be not only forward-looking but formative in our thinking about how we're addressing quality in a time like this. Over and over again, we heard, and somebody explicitly said, technology in this instance right now is not an obstacle; it's a facilitator. And the importance of embracing this. There were a number of comments about there's additional work for quality assurance to do, that this is a reform and innovation opportunity, and we in quality assurance really need to be taking advantage of that. And we talked a bit about post-crisis scenario, that this is a moment of change that it's not just here right now and then it'll go away, but we're likely to be dealing with these changes and future changes over a long period of time affecting higher education and quality assurance. Lots of good ideas in all of that from my perspective. And again, thanks to the panelists and to folks with the many comments. This webinar has been recorded. We will be posting it on the CHEA website in the very near future for additional listing. Again, thank you everyone. Be safe, be well, and enjoy the rest of the day or evening.